I'm sure at some point today, the vast majority of my audience took at least a little bit of time out to take part in the pomp and circumstance of the inauguration goings on in Washington, D.C., whether it was the parade or I think now they're going to have the Commander-in-Chief's ball. There was different times when Mr. Trump sat down and signed different pieces of legislation or the actual inauguration itself. There's all sorts of different things people have been commenting on, from hats to audio malfunctions to all sorts of different things. But I would like to just put a caveat out that one of the common themes that I'm hearing is that Trump's going to fix everything. This one man is going to fix it all, that we're in a golden era now immediately, and all of the problems have just melted away and everything's fine. It reminded me of a teaching that we had in the church long ago, that Satan was an imitator, that he would at times transform himself into an angel of light. This quote from Vance Havner is very, very prescient. Satan doesn't necessarily fight churches or fight what the perceived good is. He joins it, does more harm by sowing tares than by actually pulling up wheat, accomplishing more by imitation than outright opposition. Now, I think this is going to be the problem, because regardless of who is in Washington, D.C., I don't care how far back you go, criminals don't obey laws. Jimmy Carter at one time was a good man. And like all men, he had his failings, but he was only in office for 4 years. You could talk about Ford this way, Reagan, Clinton, Obama. You could talk about any of them, but there has been a steady march in the direction of evil, regardless of who sat in the Oval Office for however amount of time. And we're going to kind of get into a couple of the things that he talked about today and maybe hop into the Wayback Machine a little bit. I know it's been a long time since 2015, 2016. A lot of people who are involved in the Trump camp now, involved in politics now even, weren't even hardly old enough, or were at a different point in their life way back in 15 and 16 to remember some of the details that, if they came out today, I think might give some people some pause. But it's actually the reason there is a Florida Maquis Patreon channel. The reason we even had to stand one up, myself and many others had to stand up Patreon channels, is because right after Trump took office back in 2017, the first time, that's when the worst censorship hit. Florida Maquis, wait, hold on. It's the Biden and the Democrats. They're the ones that do the censorship. Not really. Not really. The worst, if you don't believe me, ask any other channel. Go back and look. It was when Trump took office that all of the platforms, all the stuff online that wasn't necessarily associated with the government directly, began of their own volition censoring and applying algorithms that were negative. Now, love to have you over at Patreon. Could sure use your help. It's gotten nothing but worse. We have levels over there all the way from $1 a month up to $15 a month. Entirely up to you, whatever God puts on your heart. God bless all of you who have. Let's get into it. Is there any hope? I'm sure a lot of you saw Florida Maquis. He signed an executive order banning, pay attention here, anyone in government from attempting to influence people in Google or Twitter or anyone else from censoring people, though we all know that they can do it on their own. It doesn't have to be a direct line from government. In fact, even to this day, the Florida Maquis, Twitter, X, whatever you want to call it, that channel's banned. I've appealed it 7 or 8 times. And I'm not even allowed to speak on Twitter or X at all. Can't share anything. Can't do anything at all. So the censorship's still in place. It is absolutely still in place. Trump signs executive order against censorship. Accused his predecessor of abusing the law under pretext of fighting, quote-unquote, disinformation. It's still out there. It's absolutely still out there. And even though this might be a step in the right direction, I believe it's a distraction. If you don't believe me about when the censorship took place, I've pulled up here 2 videos from the Patriot Nurse channel. If you don't believe me, I mean, some people might be able to accuse Florida Maki of not being all in behind Donald Trump. Can't really accuse her of that. So go back and look. This, why her channel is in jeopardy, how to keep watch if it's banned. And then this one, a really great one, 6 minutes. What happened to her channel just in one night? And she's just a nurse. But conservatives get attacked from all directions. Now, this is the big one for me, because there's a slight distinction being made amongst conservatives that's a huge problem. Donald Trump vows to make male and female the only two legal genders in the United States. That's fine. But he stopped short of addressing the real problem. You see, you might as well say Donald Trump made it the official policy of the federal government that grass is green, the sky is blue, water is wet, and in wintertime, it's cold. See, these are things we can see with our own two eyes. One day at the beach in Florida, or pictures of one day at the beach in Florida, will tell you that there is a distinct difference between men and women. There are two genders. That's it, period. That's a fact. Now, here's the part that's going to bother you a little bit. Line of presidential succession. This is something that I've watched, not because I wish anything bad to happen to Mr. Trump, but he's 80. If you look at the people who are in the line of succession that Donald Trump had any control over putting there, meaning you can forget 2 and 3, Speaker of the House, President pro tempore of the Senate, that's Chuck Grassley, and I forget the Speaker of the House's name. It just ran out of my brain real quick. But the point being, Vice President J.D. Vance owes his allegiance, owes all of his ability to have ascended to this office to a guy named Peter Thiel, who is a homosexual. Secretary of State Marco Rubio. Now, Marco Rubio wasn't the first choice. Wasn't the first choice of Donald Trump. A guy named Rick Grinnell was. How many of you knew Rick Grinnell was going to be Donald Trump's Secretary of State until he was diagnosed with cancer? He was a former acting director of national intelligence. That's Tulsi Gabbard's job now, but back in 2016, that's who Trump had. Openly gay man to serve as Secretary of State, a role that oversees U.S. foreign affairs. He had to back out because he got diagnosed with cancer. That's why Marco Rubio was there. But if you look at the line of succession, hold on, here it is. Secretary of State was going to be a gay person. Vice President, and you can look this up. In fact, I've got a couple things pulled up. J.D. Vance, very, very close with Thiel. Peter Thiel, who's also a homosexual. Secretary of the Treasury is the next person in the line of succession. Guess who that is? Trump's latest pick for his wildly, quote-unquote, anti-LGBTQ cabinet is a gay billionaire. Scott Bessent, I believe is this man's name. Gay billionaire, and his husband was there at blah, blah, blah. Husband, listen to me. It's nauseating to even say it. His partner that he refers to as somebody that he married and would be a husband. It's just ridiculous. So we have Rick Grinnell, we have Peter Thiel, and we have Scott Bessent. All right up in the rarefied air. All above Pete Hegseth, who's going to be Secretary of Defense, and above Attorney General Pam Bondi. So all of these people up here, right at the very top, all have homosexuals whispering in their ears. Rachel, and this is very few times do I refer to Rachel Maddow, but J.D. Vance's rise is thanks to the gay billionaire's influence. She's right about this. Never been a fan of J.D. Vance. And I've shown other things about him that give me great pause. And once again, Mr. Trump himself, over the years, you see, he says one thing. He says one thing when the cameras are out. But then, the stuff he does behind the scenes. From Politico, thank you, President Trump. Trump celebrated gay marriage victory at Mar-a-Lago party with log cabin Republicans. I looked this up. That's true. He hosted a gay marriage at Mar-a-Lago. And you remember that way back when, remember Jenna Talikova, Miss Universe? He let a tranny compete in Miss Universe before it became politically unpopular to do. Trump makes history with LGBT inclusion and acceptance speech back when it was winning him votes. See, now it would cost him votes. That's why he's saying only two genders and all this kind of stuff. But that's not the trans. The trans isn't the problem. It's how it got started. The homosexuals are the problem. And they are all over his administration. In fact, if I'm not mistaken, hold on. Peter Thiel and J.D. Vance, how PayPal founder boosted VP candidate's political career, 17 July 2024. You can read that. Here's that guy with Mr. Trump. Peter Thiel. Heavily involved in the Trump campaign. In fact, this is the first guy that J.D. Vance worked for out of law school. If I remember this right, way back in 2011 when J.D. Vance was still in law school, he left and went to work for this guy, and this guy was basically, his homosexual, was basically the mentor of J.D. Vance. So, I mean, Sodom and Gomorrah, anyone? See, just because they all agree with Trump and just because they're politically, in some cases, right-wing, especially when it comes to money, no one has ever accused homosexual men of having financial problems, that's for sure. So, I mean, someone might say, well, we should put homosexual men in charge of all the country's finances. They'd be just as rich. You know, okay, if that's your standard of what right and wrong is, but I would refer back to here. So, you know, call me whatever name you want. Call me anti-Trump. Call me this, that, or the other. I know what motivates these people in Washington, D.C., and it's not moral right and wrong. So you can have Satan in the Republican Party. You can have Satan in the Trump camp. You can have Satan in the Biden camp. You can have Satan in... See, Satan is just because he's one place doesn't mean he's not another. I think that's the biggest mistake people make. And I'll leave with that. They believe that, well, if Trump was running against Biden, and we know Biden was being influenced by Satan, then Trump must be being influenced by God. Doesn't work that way. It doesn't work that way. Who were the good guys in World War II? The Nazis in Germany, the socialist Nazis in Germany, or the communist Russians? Who were the good guys? They have gone back and forth and at each other for all through history. Who are the good guys, the communists or the socialists? Well, not really. That's a different, not real. No, it's not. It's not different. Satan can work in any group of people at any time he wants to. And the biggest problem that I'm seeing right now is everybody's dropping their guard and saying, oh, well, we know for a fact that now that Biden and Harris are gone and we know that they were evil, that evil is leaving. So if evil is leaving, then therefore good must be coming in. It doesn't work that way. So I will leave it there. And I'll leave you to your Bibles to confirm everything I've said. And was also to confirm everything I've said, check out the Patriot Nurse channel. Believe me, she's actually, I think, deleted some of her videos where she went farther in depth into the extent of the censorship that hit back in 2017-18 in that region. It wasn't just under Biden. It got a little worse. It got a little worse because the censorship was applicable to a lot wider range of subjects. But believe me, after Trump took office, right after, tons of censorship. Huge waves of it. So, while this sounds good on its face, I'm just saying, I'm just saying, it's, there's only, maybe I'll save it for Patreon. That's what I'll do. I'll save it for Patreon. We'll get a little bit farther into this. God bless. Pray for each other. Pray for me. I'll pray for you. Lift each other up. Like, share, subscribe. I'll see you guys next time.